wild women in the deep East Texas woods. They read some good books and party with the authors and have more fun than you think they could. Wild, wicked, and free, they're the Pulpwood Queens.
Pulpwood Queens. Hi everybody, I'm Kathy Patrick. Welcome to Beauty in the Book. Today my guest is Yann Martel, the Canadian author up there in the literary stratosphere because he won the Man Booker Prize for that outrageously successful book, Life of Pi. Yann's generating lots of controversy these days, and we love controversy, don't we? With his exciting new book, Beatrice and Virgil. Let's find out more right here on Beauty in the Book, where reading is always in style. Welcome, Yann. How are you?
Very well. Thank you very much, Kathy.
I'm very excited to have you here and to let all the book clubs know about your new book, which is quite a read. It's a very interesting story and a very interesting take. I've never read anything like your books. So please give us a little background.
Sure. It's a story of a writer named Henry who's written a book that did very well that featured animals. And after that, he decides to write a novel on the Holocaust. And it's not just a simple book. He decides to write, in fact, two books. One's a novel and one's an essay. And it's rather unusual to publish novel and essay together. So he decides to publish it as a flip book. Now, the problem is his publishers hate the idea. And he is so disappointed with that essentially he stops writing. He falls into silence. And with his wife, they move to another town. And one day he receives a letter, a thin package, and in that package there's a short story by Flaubert, the French writer. There's an extract of a play, and there's a very short note that says, "I liked your book, I need your help." And the person who wrote that happens to live in the same town as Henry, so he decides to just walk over, why not, and drop off his usual card that he writes to all readers who write to him. But he discovers that this person who wrote to him is a taxidermist, a man who stuffs animals. And that really strikes him. He's never seen a taxidermist. He didn't know taxidermy still existed. So he goes into the shop and he meets the man. And the novel is essentially, on one level, the relationship between Henry the writer and this taxidermist, who's this elderly, not very friendly, in fact, downright unfriendly man. He discovers that the taxidermist is indeed the author of that play. And the play is a play that features two animals. And they're the ones that name the novel, so Beatrice and Virgil. Beatrice is a donkey, Virgil is a monkey, who are in difficult circumstances, to put it the least. And Henry the writer seems to recognize those circumstances. He thinks there's something Holocaustal about it, but he's not sure. And he doesn't want to press the taxidermist, so he just comes and visits him again and again and again, and they always discuss the play, and eventually things happen.
There's a lot of symbolism in this book that, as I was reading it, I was thinking to myself, this is one I really need to read slower.
The topic of the novel fundamentally is the Holocaust, and there is something profoundly moving about the Holocaust. Even in spite of this Holocaust fatigue, as it's sometimes called, because there are a lot of books on it, it's still a profoundly moving event. I mean, 1/4 of the victims of the Holocaust were children. So it is profoundly moving. However, I didn't want to approach it in the way that the Holocaust has mostly been approached, because that's one of the ideas I had in writing this book, because I noticed that most books on the Holocaust are in a non-fictional mode. And what is largely absent, and it surprised me, was the fiction on the Holocaust. In other words, novels, plays, poetry, that do what art usually does, which is invent the facts, but to remain spiritually true.
Yann, tell me, in both of your books, animals play such an important part, and I know you've been asked about this many times. I love animals, and animal stories always get me, and that touched me, the description of the pair. I mean, that was just absolutely amazing. Why do you use the animals in your books?
I think it's for a number of reasons. First of all, we idealize nature, so especially wild animals. You know, we look at nature and we see beauty in it, we see freedom, we sort of see all the things that we perhaps feel are lacking in our own lives. And also a key thing why animals work well in literature is we project innocence onto animals. So I found, and I found this in Life of Pi, if the reader reads about a human being suffering, they may or may not be indifferent to it. But if they read about an animal suffering, that riles them up. So to me, an animal is a very effective literary device.
I want to know a little bit more about you. What is your background?
I went to university. I studied. I have a degree, a bachelor's degree in philosophy. And then in my early 20s, I was sort of bright but unfocused. And one day I just started writing. I wrote 2 plays. They were very bad plays. Then I wrote bad short stories. Then I wrote a bad novel, and then more bad short stories. And just slowly I got better. And I started writing because it was the first thing I started doing that I loved doing, that I could do wholeheartedly. You know, to have a blank page that I had to fill it with words that would speak of characters and events. It was my way of making a comment on the world.
Yann, let me introduce you to the Vertigo Hills Book Club in California. Say hello to Yann Martel.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Where does your fascination with the Holocaust come from? I happen to be Jewish and I'm first generation.
From the outside, I'm not Jewish and I'm much too young to have lived during the events. But it's an event that always interested me. I lived 10 years in France, 4 of them as a child, and that's where I first learned about it. I went to a British school in France, and so we were taught European history, we were taught the Second World War, and while being taught the war, we also taught the Holocaust. The Holocaust always stayed with me. There was something that puzzled me, this great massacre of innocents, this massacre of people who in no way were enemies of the state. So it always stayed with me, and I was always trying to find a way to write about it. And it was finally writing Life of Pi, in which I used animals, that led to sort of an aha moment. Because until then, I didn't feel comfortable writing on the Holocaust, precisely because I wasn't Jewish.
Right.
But then the idea of using animals, writing this animal allegory, suddenly liberated me from having to be historically accurate and factual.
Hi, my name is Glennie. My question is, how autobiographical was the book?
It was autobiographical only to the extent that it served my fictional purpose. So yes, I'm a writer. Yes, Henry is a writer. But, you know, I don't play the clarinets. I've never worked in a cafe. I'm not an amateur actor. I've never been stabbed by anyone. I constructed Henry to imitate Jewish life in Germany. So Jews have historically been very involved in the arts. You know, that's why I haven't played the clarinet. Clarinet is often found in Jewish music, in klezmer music, for example. Any number of writers are Jewish in the United States, just as in Europe. Many of the politicians in the Weimar Republic were Jewish. So a lot of the Jews were involved in the arts, so I have Henry be an artist. A lot of Jews were involved in commerce because they were not allowed to own land, hence I have Henry work in a cafe. Germany's Jews didn't see Hitler coming, you know, just as Henry doesn't see the taxidermist coming. So I constructed him to be a parallel, and when there are autobiographical elements, it's only because it served my fictional purpose.
Of all the books you've written, do you think this is probably the toughest book that you've written to date?
Yes, Beatrice and Virgil was the toughest book. It wasn't because of the emotional content that it was hard to write. It was hard to write for technical reasons. What do you do with a genocide? You know, art has certain rules, and the genocide profoundly destroys all those rules. So I'll give you an example. In a story only works if the character changes. A novel, a story, a play works on the idea that characters change through time. What's terrible about the Holocaust is characters did not change. The Nazis were evil at the beginning, in the middle, and the end. And the Jews were always innocent, so their personality didn't matter. And so that breaks the rules of art. So it was very technically difficult for me to look at this massive, monstrous event and try to do something other than just bear witness. And that's why most writing on the Holocaust is non-fictional. But so to try to not be a witness, to try to create art out of genocide was just technically extremely difficult. And the end result was 7 years of writes and rewrites and starting over again. So it was the hardest book I had to write. Life of Pi in comparison was very easy, and I can already sense that my next book is going to be easy to write.
Thank you so much, Yann. It's been a pleasure, and thank you so much to my book club. Tackling a subject of the Holocaust is never easy, but Yann Martel has written a wonderful and compelling read with Beatrice and Virgil. I highly recommend it to your book clubs. Until next time, we'll see you at Beauty in the Book. Thanks for joining us. Can you name at least 2 other books that use animals to tell a difficult story? Go to our website to enter our Beauty in the Book giveaway. 10 people with the correct answer will be chosen at random to get a free copy of today's featured book, Beatrice and Virgil by Yann Martel.